All right, I have the chief editor over at Breitbart News to help me go through the irrelevance of Joe Biden, the fact that his crown was stolen from him and no one seems to give a crap, and so many other stories. Alex, Marlow, thank you so much for joining me today.
Stephen, it's always nice to be on your program.
So we've got the DNC happening in Chicago this week. I'm reading that there are now many Democrats that secretly want Joe Biden to come back, take back his delegates, make a move against Kamala Harris. They see her popularity dropping quickly now that people are getting to know her. They see that she has zero war and zero foreign policy experience. Have you heard anything like this? And why is Kamala being seen as so willfully unprepared?
Yeah, they're really having a tough time the last couple of weeks, it feels like, but that might not make a difference given the fact that the media is so committed to insisting that Kamala Harris is such a rock star. But, it hasn't worked in the past, but I have not heard specifically that people wish Joe Biden would come back. I certainly hear a lot of chatter of people who it still does not sit right with them that he was couped. I mean, there was a coup to remove him and to install someone who's incredibly unimpressive. There's nothing impressive about Kamala Harris. I've done a lot of research in her over the years. She's prominently featured in my book, Breaking Biden, but also I'm a Californian, so I know her record very well, and she has no core principles. She has leveraged her DEI qualifications to get where she's going. She has leveraged her connections to powerful men to get where she's going. And there's no real evidence she'd be a terrific president. It's her main skill is getting elected. And she's not even that great at that, to be honest with you, because she didn't even get a single delegate in the 2020 Democratic primary. So I think she's going to get exposed if there's enough time. But the thing is, we're 80 days out from the election. Early voting starts much sooner than that. So there's enough people who will just see the way the media is framing her as this joyful person. And that will excuse a lot of the other stuff. But yeah, she was involved in a major coup to knock off a guy who was not a great candidate. He was a bad candidate, but he had a much longer and stronger record than she had. And now people are seeing she doesn't totally know what she's doing. She picked a really lame vice presidential pick. I'll tell you about him if you'd like. And then after that, her first policy positions out of the gate are either plagiarized from Trump or pure communism. It's just very odd moves going on right now.
Yeah, I do want to jump in on Tim Walz.
Sure.
Some call him Tampon Tim.
Yeah.
Others, the strongest advocate for sex change operations for children who have no mental capacity to decide their own gender. Tell us your thoughts on Tim Walz.
Yeah, I think he's an absolutely awful pick. So I'm delighted, of course, as someone who's openly pro-Trump and would like for Trump to win. I'm very happy with the pick. But yeah, I call him Tiananmen Tim sometimes because his allegiance to China. He's talked about how he's praised communism. He's praised the Chinese Communist Party. He had a business that was 100% dependent on the Chinese Communist Party, allowing for the business to exist. He said his wedding on the Tiananmen Square anniversary, he honeymooned in China. If you think the Biden's connections to China are deep, I mean, it's the Tiananmen Tim. I mean, he's clearly was a target for Chinese government infiltration in the U.S. government. Now, I'm not saying he's that far off. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's more nuances if I got to know him. I don't know for sure that he's a communist agent or something. But I will tell you that he clearly was targeted. We know this because there's 7 secret police stations that the Chinese party has in this country. One of them is in Minneapolis. And of course, you're targeting Tim Walz. So his routine that he's out there acting like J.D. Vance is the weirdo. Tim Walz is the weirdo. He's an incredibly weird guy. And you can see it the way he acts. He does this thing where he's this fake hillbilly but lib routine. It's all baloney. The guy is a China file who wants tampons in the boys' room. So that is what he's about. He's not a normal guy. He's a far left radical. And he was an awful pick, and I can't believe she made it.
Yeah. or somebody made it for her, right?
Sure, sure.
For sure, I'm reading that President Joe Biden will speak and basically give a funeral speech about himself at the DNC. He then plans to leave early and skip Kamala's coronation. He's not even going to it. Your thoughts on this? And is the blood between these two just bad, bad, bad under the surface?
Yeah, it's got to be. So, I try to be, when I bring this analysis, and thanks for all your respect and trust you've given me. I try to look at it not from what my positions are. I'll gladly share with you all of my positions, but I try to look at it in terms of what is really going on here. And from what I learned about Joe Biden from my year and a half of research into him, is he was really motivated by three things. It's not ideology. He's no ideology to speak of. It is that he wanted to be president. He's wanted to be president since he was a boy. And this goes back before there are even really written records about Biden. He wanted to be president. He would name all of his pets things like president and general and senator and commander. He does all this stuff where it's all about reverence for the United States government and the way that we've structured power in this country. And he's always wanted to ascend it. It's always how he's been. He wrote essays about it as a kid. So that was clear that was not going to continue after January, because either he was going to step aside or Trump was going to beat him, and Trump was going to win by a lot. And I don't normally speak that plainly because the Democrats can always cheat and pull rabbits out of their hat. But Trump was up by so much. There was nothing they were going to do. Trump was going to win. So he was going to be president. So what else motivates the Biden family and Joe Biden himself? He wants legacy and he wants money. So legacy, if he had stuck on the ticket, that legacy was going to get destroyed also, because not only was he going to lose, he would have been solely to blame for it, because everyone was telling him, hey, buddy, you got to shuffle off here. It's time to move on. You're getting old. You can barely talk. Your jaw's falling out of your head during the middle of the debate. You have no idea where you are, confusing your wife and your sister. We can't do this. So it's pretty clear from a legacy perspective, he was better off quitting, being the only guy thus far to have beaten Trump. So then there's the money component. And how much money are they going to offer Joe Biden and the Joe Biden family for him to move along? That's the big unknown here. And we're going to be seeing that over the next 6 months to a year. All of your favorite Bidens are going to end up in professorships or at the head of some foundation, or with some, if Kamala wins, presiding over some massive U.S. government expenditure in Iraq or in Costa Rica or in Ukraine or in some other place where they've been involved in the past, or China, for example, and they'll be involved in those businesses. So that's what's going to happen. I don't know what that's going to look like or how widespread it's going to be. It's certainly going to be interesting to track if you choose to track it. The Bidens will largely be headed off to irrelevance. So I'm not sure if anyone's really going to track it. Hopefully I'll have the resources to do that, because I'll be curious to see the extent of their corruption. But to come back to your question, he's got to be feeling absolutely horrible, because he's wanted to be president his whole life. He won. He'd gotten all the delegates this time. They did rig that primary so that he wasn't really challenged, but he really was the chosen guy. And then he has one bad debate, and now everyone is saying that if you run, we're not going to help you, we're not going to support you, and then we're going to blame you for all the losses. He really had his hands tied. So he's got to be absolutely steaming mad and fuming. So they have to, I bet that bag of cash grew with every single ask that they have of him. Every time they ask him to speak, I bet that bag of cash is getting a little bit heavier. And will he be there tonight or whatever it is, the first night of the convention? Trying not to use dates because this is mostly evergreen answer. He'll be there, but he does not want to stick around. And I don't know if there's enough money in the world to make him do it.
Yeah. I've been pondering this morning, which VP betrayed their president more, Mike Pence or Kamala Harris? With Mike Pence, I think it was fundamentally a difference in opinion on the law, what he felt he could do, and a matter of courage. Kamala Harris, she just walked in and stole it, like plain and simple. So I see hers almost as a worse betrayal, because, how many people were backing her to pull this coup off? I don't know your thoughts on that. Let me take 60 seconds to interrupt and tell you about something that has me incredibly concerned. If you're a homeowner like me, when is the last time you checked your home title? The legal document that shows you own it. This is a quitclaim deed. You fill this out and you take it in with an address, a name, and a fake signature. The document then gets stamped by a fake notary seal, which you can buy on the internet. You pay a small fee and boom, the county official transfers your name off of the title and into the new criminal's name without you ever knowing it. But scammers don't want your house. They want the equity in your house. They know that because of values going up, that most Americans have value or home equity in their house. They take that and then they get loans against your collateral, leaving you with a financial and legal nightmare. But you can protect yourself from these criminals using Home Title Lock's triple lock protection at HomeTitleLock.com. The first step is to go to the website and see if your home title is still in your name. Just go to HomeTitleLock.com, enter your address, and get a complete title scan to see if you're already a victim. Use promo code Gardner for this scan and get free 30-day trial of triple lock title protection, totally free. The link is down below, HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Gardner. Go do it right now, HomeTitleLock.com.
It's a great point. It's really fascinating when you study human psychology at all. I'm a total amateur in this regard. But I have been at the seat of, or at least at the right hand of people who have assumed seats of power in this country. And the power dynamics, it's really, some of the axioms are true, that sometimes your friends are the ones who are able to stab you the hardest. And it's sometimes co-opting your enemies is a better strategy. I know that's what Biden tried to do with Harris, but she was always someone who was an enemy of his. And I think Donald Trump has done this as well, where he's taken people who have spoken critically about him in the past, and he's brought them on board. If you look at a lot of people like Kayleigh McEnany, who's a great press secretary for him, she was very negative on Trump early on. J.D. Vance was negative on Trump early on. Now he's the vice president, and J.D. will, he'll walk through a plate glass window for Donald Trump now. But he was very negative when Trump was first on the scene. You start seeing these power dynamics at play and just know that that's what this is all about. That's what all of Washington is about. It's an amoral place, and it is all about how do you get power. And when you're selecting people for those roles, the vice presidency, you have to be sober about it. That Kamala was vice president because she was a able foe for Biden in the primary. She did well in those debates, and she offered stuff to the ticket. They were never going to be close friends, and it was always a possibility that she was going to stab him in the back. But one thing Biden had up his sleeve is that she's not that bright and she's not that capable. But once the Obamas came in, and they did, and said, hey, Joe, you got to move on, and Kamala was the most logical person to assume the role, she jumped at it. And it's a totally classic historical example, and it's something that really should be studied as more details come out over time.
Yeah. I'm reading at the DNC that Planned Parenthood and other groups will be giving out free abortions.
Yeah.
Free vasectomies so that men, aren't creating family. Why is the Democrat Party so obsessed with death and blocking repopulation, yet they're willing to flood the country with illegal immigrants that have opposing ideology to the way Americans think?
I mean, that's their future. Their future is watering down America. They never thought America was an exceptional place. I don't think they know what American values are. I don't think they could define them. And they certainly don't want to preserve any of them. If I define the core American values as in God we trust, which they're more secular than we are. E pluribus unum, of many one. They like to separate people, have segregated dorm rooms. They basically want to have segregated social media. They love to be segregated from people. So they don't believe of anyone. Liberty, obviously, they're constantly looking at ways to curtail our liberty. The First Amendment, they're not into free speech. And the Second Amendment, they hate guns. So it's like, what about America do the Democrat Party, what do they like? Like, what about our core values? So they don't care about watering it down. And trust me, there's a lot of wonderful immigrants. My father-in-law is a legal immigrant, a wonderful person, lived the American dream, and it totally embraced what it was to be an American, became a very high tax-paying person, and contributed. That's great. We love that stuff. But that guy loves America a lot more than your average person who is flooding into the country trying to make money and then sending it back home, which is really what most illegal immigration is. They're not sending their best. They're sending people who want to make money, and they want to make it so that liberals in the big city can pay their back of the house workers in their restaurant or their nannies, their gardeners less money. That's what it's about. It's about creating competition for Americans so that they can save money. And then those people eventually vote Democrat more often than not. That's their plan. And conservative people tend to have children. I mean, Stephen, you and I were just talking offline. You have 3 kids. I have 4 kids. I mean, we're trying to walk the walk. If we like this country, then we're trying to repopulate it with people with American values. And that's a threat to them. So they've got to counteract it. And it is noteworthy, though, the vasectomy part, because it's funny how those are getting lumped together, because I'm of a certain age. I don't know if I'm going to be having any more children. And it's a very weird thing to think about sterilizing yourself. And it's just something that this could be a whole rabbit hole. We don't have to do this today, but it's amazing. It's very fashionable right now. But it really is sterilizing yourself. And that just seems like we've normalized that pretty fast. I'm not saying it's wrong. I don't have a strong opinion on it. Someone in the comments educate me. But it seems like sterilizing yourself seems like a big deal. We're getting pretty cash.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick example. I have a niece and now a nephew. I performed their wedding in their early 20s. They were for Democrat values, and now they've gone out. They've got a job. They're making good money. But after the Roe v. Wade was overturned, they talked about him getting a vasectomy, because if women couldn't have abortions, he didn't want to be able to impregnate a woman, right? And now they are actively trying to have a baby. They're against abortion. They're against being robbed in taxation by a broken federal government. So it's just interesting how the pendulum can swing. Nobody's story is ever written. But yeah, when I saw giving out free vasectomies, I thought, gosh, I better get there really quickly. Save myself some money, like otherwise I'm going to be here in Utah using a coupon. But no, I think it's weird. Like, hey, show up, we'll abort your baby and chop your man's manhood off. Yeah. It just seems like such a strange way to pull in a crowd.
I will say that I feel like I feel like it's an interesting thing, because I'm not for people having broken homes, and I don't think that in general it's a great idea to not plan for having a family and to make sure you're in a good headspace. That's the ideal. But it is interesting how we have this culture where abortions are a good thing on the left. Is they shout their abortions. We covered this. This was years ago, but Lena Dunham, the actress who's kind of fallen off the face of the earth, it seems like, but the actress and director, who talked about how she wished she had an abortion, and she thought it was upsetting for her that she's never had one. And that's crazy. That's crazy stuff. And that's a mainstream position on the Democrat left. And so when those same people are telling me that I need to sterilize myself, it does make me think twice. Not to say I'm locked into that position for life, but it just is. It's an amazing thing that we've culturally just gotten there so fast.
Yeah. Why? What do you think is the main reason Kamala Harris is hiding from the mainstream media? Because you mentioned this earlier, and I've been thinking this, like, this is a massive Democrat-controlled apparatus that would love nothing more than to crown her the Queen of America, and she actively avoids them. That's bad.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think it's the right strategy for her, because I know what I know about Harris is she's not particularly bright. And I know, Stephen, you've heard me on this show, and your audience has, actually defend Joe Biden's intellect. Like, I don't think he's a genius, but I think he's much smarter than he was given credit for. I don't feel the same way about Harris. And I've been watching her career for a long time, and I've researched her extensively. You guys have seen the clips. Those clips are, she's not a deep thinker. She's not. She's someone who has made some shrewd political moves and has been at the right place at the right time a number of times. So the more she talks, the more she's going to be exposed. I think people are having the opposite reaction to JD Vance, for example, who JD, I think, got off to an okay start, but didn't necessarily come out of the gates at top speed when he was announced. But the more people see what he's putting out on Twitter, the more people see him sit down and do tough interviews on Sunday mornings, the more they're realizing that he's a deeply substantial person. Now, I'm not saying that you have to agree with every one of his positions, but he is someone who I've gotten to know over the years personally, and he's an incredibly bright person who thinks ahead and thinks for himself. And Kamala Harris is a composite of her donors and her voters. And Democrats are mostly comfortable with that. But for normal Americans who are open-minded, it's kind of off-putting because she cannot string together a long, drawn-out thought because she doesn't stand for anything. She stands for getting elected. And you can see this with her positions on criminal justice reform, where she was someone who built up a reputation for setting records in terms of locking up nonviolent drug offenders when she was in California. And then she turns around and she wants to defund the police. And though she came off that position very quickly and wanted to bail out rioters in after the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020. So this is a total 180, and it's purely for political calculations.
Yeah, I agree. Let's switch gears for a second. Why would the FBI secretly burn Thomas Matthew Crook's body, betraying Congress and an investigation? Why would they block access to all photos and autopsy information? Why would the FBI clean off the crime scene, all the blood, the next day, and allow all of the firsthand witnesses to go home the night of the shooting? Like, this is so suspicious. I can't even stand it.
Yeah, I think it is. It's interesting because I've been giving a lot of thought about this, and it's tough because I am in a business where I have a big news company, and the fact checkers are always trying to get in our case, and it's challenging sometimes when you've got something like this where has all the hallmarks of all of this feels like an inside job, and we all know it feels like an inside job, and yet there's no hard evidence that it is. But then you keep getting these details. The more you know about this, the more it looks like that there's something that's being hidden from us. We know things are being hidden from us. And the nature of all the mistakes that took place, it just feels like there's something going on, that they've tried to take out Trump in every single way. They tried this way. It was a miracle. I spoke to President Trump about this. He 100% believes it was an act of God that he survived. He was doing the math on how the bullet passed his head. And he was showing how he was turning, first of all, to a sign that was on his right that's usually placed on his left. So, but it happened to be on the right that day. He's turning towards it, and he was saying that the math of where the bullet was coming from, he's basically, he's dead. And then just at the moment, it's just passing parallel to his head as he's turning. That's where it hits him. He should be dead. He should be dead. It should have worked. So how could that have happened in this country? And all of it suggests that there was something going on beyond just one crazy kid decided to shoot Trump and almost got away with it. So then you learn stuff like this, like the FBI, does the immediate cremation. No one knows why they're doing it this fast. And details are still so sparse. Stephen, I don't know. I really don't. But why? Why aren't they being more straightforward? Do you have a take on it?
Well, obviously, I think that I had a former CIA on, and he said that the CIA and the FBI will always do whatever it takes to avoid embarrassment for the CIA and the FBI. So this is whether there's an inside job or not, even though I agree with you, all signs seem to be pointing that this seems pretty calculated. Just out of an embarrassment for the failure, they may be covering it up. Like sure. That, just Occam's razor, the most simplest explanation would be ego wants to protect ego. And so they're just trying to bury that. But it is all super, super suspicious. And just this morning, I'm reading that now he may have been shot in multiple locations. But again, the body's gone. We'll never know.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It's very strange. And I've been keeping a list just for myself of all of the things that suggest that there's more than just the one guy acting alone and being crazy. I mean, just let's go back to that the sloped roof lie, where the Secret Service director said that the roof was left unguarded because it had a steep slope. I mean, Stephen, here's the point. If they were involved, this is what they would say. I'm not saying they were involved. I don't know. But I know that if they were, this is exactly how they would explain why the roof was unguarded. It's something this stupid. And they sold that to us. They tried to get us to buy that the roof was unguarded. First of all, why was it unguarded? That sounds impossible. And then they said, oh, because the roof was too sloped. Come on. He had stashed a rifle. He had flown his drone. He had the rangefinder. There's a guy setting up a kill shot and no one noticed. It's ridiculous. It's all ridiculous and we'll never get answers. So this is just the latest piece of evidence that we're not going to get answers. Is it because they're covering up their own incompetence or because it's a deeper thing? I don't know if we'll ever know, but I'll always wonder. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I will too. The roof didn't seem too steep when 7 or 8 of them got on it within minutes of him being shot. The roof didn't seem too steep when the next day the FBI was hosing away all of the blood. Yeah. It didn't seem too steep when they got up there and removed his body. I'm just saying, it didn't seem too steep to me.
Let me ask you, why would some top Democrats from the January the 6th commission, why would they want Trump to have lessened security detail? They wanted to reduce his Secret Service detail. Why would they want that? There's only one reason you would want that. There's only one reason you would possibly want a guy who's been targeted as Trump to have a reduced Secret Service detail. Is so that he will die. So these are top elected Democrats who felt this way and their staffers. So there's no other explanation, only one. So, and they almost killed him. And then we're told it's just one crazy kid who did it. Yeah. Okay, maybe it was, but I don't know if I'm convinced yet.
Yeah, I like how the same people who call him Hitler over and over again after he's shot are like, our prayers are with you. Oh, you're praying for Hitler now. Yeah. Oh, good for you. Like how quickly they fake this sympathy for someone who they wish had been shot a little bit more in the head than he was. I want to ask you, do you think, I'm reading this morning over on Breitbart that they now believe they have everything they need in order to impeach Joe Biden, but they're saying it's too little too late. He's not even going to be president anymore. Is the Biden family going to get away with these crimes? Because even in the last 30 days, it was proven that Hunter took millions of more dollars as a unregistered foreign agent for influence peddling and zero services in exchange. Are the Bidens going to get away with this?
Yeah, they are. They're going to get away with it. And that's part of why Joe stepped aside, is to make sure that they will get away with it. And I'm sure that was a huge part of whatever was negotiated behind the scenes. And yeah, so 292-page report. Of course, Biden committed impeachable offenses. It's an interesting thing because if Biden had remained on the ticket, which really I believed until the bitter end he was going to stay on, it was really only when the heat got turned up to when it became clear they were going to just blame him for all the losses, and he had almost no chance of winning. It was really to the very end where I think people didn't believe he was still going to be the nominee. I might have fewer issues with the timing. The timing looks silly now, of course, because they're not going to bring impeachment because that's going to distract from Kamala Harris, which we need to have the focus on Kamala Harris. He is no one to pass his legacy off to. So he'll be pretty much irrelevant in a few months. And they'll have to prop him up with some sort of board position, try to send him some money, get his family some money. But overall, they're going to be irrelevant. And that means they're not going to be worth the Republicans' time. Now, President Trump, if he wins, my guess is he doesn't blame Biden. He thinks Biden is part of the system and he doesn't like the system, but I don't think he's going to spend resources investigating the Bidens. So that's a disappointment to me. And I would recommend to President Trump, and I probably will at some point if he wins, I would say you still have to make examples out of this family. But overall, yeah, this is too little too late. This was always my fear that they would do something like this. I don't entirely blame them because if this was 3 months from an election and Biden was the nominee, it might be more effective. But for now, this is exactly what I would have guessed would happen, is it would have taken too long, they would have turned up too little, and they would have delivered it in a way that minimizes impact. Releasing it today on the day that, and again, I'm sorry, I'll try not to do dates, releasing it on Monday on a day where Joe's going to speak and pass the party off to Kamala Harris, It all makes sense. It makes sense. It's just not that strong, which is what you've all come to expect from the Republican Party. Most of their stuff makes sense. It's just not that strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, final question.
Sure.
Have you ever seen a more lame duck, irrelevant president in your lifetime? Like, Biden is so irrelevant and so lame duck. Like, nobody even cares that he's still in office. There's been zero proof that him being removed or not running has anything to do with the country. Like, every night I go to bed thinking, this guy is so irrelevant now. Like, literally, his legacy is that he is a nothing. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah, it's tough for me because I wrote a book about what a historically bad guy he is, and I hope people read it still. But it's unlikely. I know it's going to be a tough pitch. But luckily, I got the Kamala chapter in there, so there's a good bit of research on her. No, I feel the same way. It's unbelievable. I was reading the news this morning, and Tony Blinken's in Israel trying to negotiate a peace deal of some kind and some sort of ceasefire. And I was thinking, oh yeah, that's kind of a big deal. I mean, there's still wars going on. Biden's still in charge. His administration's still in charge. They're still presumably doing some sort of work. It's just none of us care. We've all moved on. We don't assume anything is going to come out of Washington until Biden's out. And I don't think anyone is interested in his opinion or his takes or whatever he's up to. I think that it'll be interesting to see what he says at the DNC and how he looks, but he truly is the most irrelevant person all of a sudden. And it really happened overnight. He was the nominee. His agenda was noteworthy, and now all of it's meaningless. And it really did happen with the flip of a switch. All he had to do was say, I'm not running. And now he's got his infrastructure that he's built, which is substantial. It's all sort of shared. It's all leased. It's part Obama world, part Clinton world, part his own stuff, people who've been with him since the 80s or even before. His team is very diffuse, disparate, and he's not going to bring everyone back together for some sort of legacy-saving maneuver where he's able to come up with something that makes him relevant for years to come. He doesn't have a son or a daughter or someone who's this powerhouse that everyone's going to be turning to for decades, who can speak on his behalf. He doesn't have any of that stuff. So he is truly sunsetting right now. I mean, this is the end of Joe Biden as we know it, I think.
Yeah. So I think your book is still incredibly relevant because those crimes were committed, but I do agree with you that Trump is probably not going to make a big public spectacle about them, although I think he should. I think Biden should go down in history as a corrupt human being that sold out his country for money because the Bidens couldn't make any money without his influence. And so I do think that almost like Nixon, right? Nixon is now forgotten as one of the most brilliant politicians that's ever lived. If you talk to Roger Stone or Monica Crowley or others, they say he was the most brilliant powerhouse politician the Republican Party ever saw. And yet he's tainted with being a crook, even though he didn't commit the crime. He was just involved in trying to cover it up. I think Biden needs to go down as a corrupt president. So I hope at least Trump will spend the time painting history correctly. And I think your book is a big part of that.
Stephen, thank you for that. And that was a brilliant summary. And that's exactly right. It is, if you poll anyone who has a regular knowledge of history, not even the totally illiterate about history, but just an average person, they just define Nixon purely based off of Watergate. That's all that matters. They don't realize what a skilled politician he was beforehand and how effective he was in terms of moving those levers of power that I was just talking about. That is Joe Biden. Joe Biden was incredibly effective at moving the levers of power. There's a lot of lessons because he took our country down, I think, a very bad path. And if we're going to allow for him just to ride off into the sunset, and even if there's a element of disgrace to it, there's a lot more nuance to that. He did a lot more harm, and I think it's worth understanding what he's done in terms of creating this permanent political class, this gigantic bureaucracy, this uniparty that's in Washington. And he established it more than any other individual over the last half century. And I think these are really relevant to know the lessons of this. But I do believe, like you, that Trump does not. I don't think Trump's going to care if he wins, which means that neither of the two candidates are going to care. So it's on us, we the people, to try to keep some of these stories alive. But it's going to be tough to do.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to put a link to your most recent articles over on Breitbart News, as well as your books, so that people can check that out. If people want to follow you online, what's the best place to do that?
The absolute best thing is to go to Breitbart, the Breitbart app. The Breitbart News app we're record traffic right now, so I'm sure many of you in the audience check us out. So thank you for that. But getting the app is the fastest way to get our content, and that is the best place. For me, you can go to alexmarlow.com, and I link all my socials there. But it is, if you want to help picking up either of my books, they're good reads, Breaking Biden and Breaking the News. You could listen to them on audiobook. I perform them really. So those are great. But the Breitbart app, that's my number one right now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Alex. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Stephen, always fun. Thank you.